We hear people talking about burnout all the time these days, that they're either overworked or overwhelmed or just struggling to get through everything in their life. But burnout, when you're struggling with infertility, can look really different, and it can have huge implications for your overall health. So how do you know that you're in burnout from this endless cycle of trying to conceive? Why is it so important to recognize? And most importantly, how can you gently bring yourself out of it? On today's episode, I want to guide you through all of this so you'll know exactly what you need each step of the way. Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for spending your time with me here today. I find that this word of burnout is such a buzzword these days, isn't it? Everyone's burnt out from something, but I don't think there is anything that I have felt more burnt out from in my entire life than I did from struggling through infertility and IVF. Because yes, we are all stressed, we are all overwhelmed through our modern lives, and I truly believe that a lot of the modern stresses that we have upon us contribute to states of shutdown more than ever. But there is something about the journey of trying to conceive when things aren't going well that just puts burnout in another league of its own, I find. So today I really want to talk about burnout when you are struggling with infertility. Like, what exactly is it? How do you know that you're burnt out? And most importantly, how do you bring yourself out of it? Because it is not a place that any of us want to be. And as I describe some of the symptoms and the ways that you might know that you're in burnout, I'm sure that there are going to be times where you recognize this is a place that you've been as well. Burnout can look really different for everyone, but there are a few really clear signs that I think are important. So I'm going to address those in the episode, but I want to start with an understanding of what burnout actually is. And when I first realized that having a baby wasn't going to be easy for me, I felt so helpless and so out of control. It was an awful feeling, smacked with this diagnosis that I had never in a million years would have seen coming. It was a really, really difficult place to be, that hopeless feeling of I have no idea where to even start. But then I did some research, and I did a lot of research, and I found out that there is actually a lot you can do to support your fertility. And it's pretty empowering when you get to that place of, well, I felt so helpless and out of control, but now I'm like, well, there's all of these things that I can start doing to support myself and to increase my chances. But that doesn't actually help long term, because if you're anything like me, you can do the endless supplements, you can have the perfect diet, you can do all of the acupuncture and the hypnosis and the herbs, and you've heard me speak about the crazy list of things that I've done many times. All of this compounds, and the problem is you can do it all. You can do it perfectly, but then if it doesn't work, what happens then? Then you get into a really difficult place, and that is where we start to get quite burnt out. So there's all of there's the stress and the pressure of doing everything perfectly and getting everything right on this journey. But when you are struggling with infertility, there are these additional pressures that come on top of all of those things, like the fear of wasting time or missing an opportunity. If there was a month where you were sick or your partner was away or whatever, everything was coming down to this fear of wasting time. We have constant pressure from social media, from doctors, from our families. This idea that fertility falls off a cliff as soon as you turn 35, which I hope is not true. But it doesn't help that we are just told all of these things. We hear all of these messages. They come at us from every angle every single day. And then it leads us into this state of perfectionism, which I speak about a lot. And perfectionism is trying to control the uncontrollable. And then what happens when things don't work out? That is the place where I think burnout starts to raise its ugly head, because, when you are in this spiral of, okay, well, let's be empowered, let's take control of this fertility journey. But how long is a piece of string? How many IVF cycles do you have to go through? How long do you have to do all of this for? How long do you have to put your life on hold for before it's going to work? And we go from this state of, let's go, let's do it, let's do all the things, let's do them right. I feel great. I've got my list of things I need to do. That's a very sympathetic place. You're in that sympathetic nervous system of go, go, go. A little bit of that energy of fight or flight, but mobilization and making things happen. But at some point, when it doesn't work, it becomes too much. And that is where we start to tip over from that sympathetic state of go, go, go and mobilization and into a dorsal state. And that is the state of your nervous system where it literally starts to shut down. It is a way of your brain's process of trying to keep you safe. So I'll explain that the state of shutdown, or your dorsal state, is where your brain has said, look, whatever is going on in this moment, this fear or this threat, I don't think that we can fight it. I don't think that we can run from it. We're not going to be able to overcome it. So what I'm going to do is numb you as much as I possibly can. I'm going to shut down everything that you're feeling so that you don't have to feel the pain of the inevitable. And that is basically what our state of burnout is, that state of shutdown. It's where despair and apathy and hopelessness and depression and deep grief all tend to live. I find for me it showed up in this feeling of I just can't be bothered. I don't see any point. I don't want to see my friends. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to have to talk to anyone, see anyone. I just want to stay on the couch. Some people can refer to this as adrenal fatigue. I find a lot of holistic practitioners will talk about this in terms of adrenal fatigue. And that's basically where your body has produced so much cortisol that it is at capacity and it can no longer produce enough cortisol. So everything is just basically going into this state of shutdown. And it sneaks up on you. This isn't like I'm go, 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 and then the next moment I'm shut down. No, it really takes its time to take control over your body. And it doesn't help that we try to pretend that everything is fine. We think, no, well, I'm going to get up. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to put on a brave face. I'm going to smile in front of my friends. For me, burnout was feeling all of this. So feeling the hopelessness and still pushing through it, pretending I was okay. And I ended up with chronic insomnia. It was impossible for me to sleep. I struggled to go to work. I found it really hard to talk to my students, to my clients, and relate to them or care about what they were going through. I'd be crying in the bathrooms at work. When I would get my period, it would just be this horrible, endless spiral of, I just don't want to do this anymore. I would pretend to be fine when I was around my family. I remember this one time where I just found out that my fallopian tubes were potentially partially blocked. And I was living overseas and my dad had come to stay with us for a couple of weeks and he'd organized all these fun things for us to do. And after I had that surgery that day, we had this family dinner booked and it was the hardest thing in the world just to put on a brave face and pretend that everything was fine. And that is what so many of us do. I feel like burnout is so common, yet it is so rarely talked about in the fertility space. And the way to get out of it is not what most people think. And it is something that I see a lot of advice on social media getting really wrong. And that's why I think this episode is important. And we're going to come back to how to get out of that in a moment. So acknowledging the emotional and the physical exhaustion that you might be feeling from burnout is really key. We need to recognize what is happening. And can you notice that you've gone from that energy of, well, I feel so in control. I'm going to do all of these things. I'm going to order my million supplements. And I'm going to really take charge of my fertility. And then we somehow slip into this state of, I just want to hide. Really simple tasks feel really overwhelming. Things that used to make you really happy or light you up, just you can't be bothered with anymore. find self-care practices really go out the window. We stay up late, we're watching things on TV or we're scrolling. I find that we tend to reach for more unhealthy foods when we're feeling really apathetic and just can't be bothered. Like, it's too hard to cook myself something really nourishing. I'm just going to grab whatever's there. Exercise for me really went out the window. I'm like, I just can't be bothered going to the gym. I feel miserable. I would rather just stay on the couch. Oftentimes, I just notice that it presents as this, you just have no energy for anything. That is burnout. And that is your nervous system trying to protect you because, as I said, it can't run or hide or fight the threat that you're facing. When we do get into this dorsal state of shutdown, the bodily functions that are occurring are also quite significant as well. So your brain will start to slow down your heart rate and your blood pressure. It starts to slow down your immune system. So it takes energy from other parts of the body to really conserve and to slow everything down. You'll notice that your digestion slows down as well. We feel a lot of brain fog, that we can't focus all that well. We might feel this overwhelming sense of exhaustion and like muscle weakness, and just your body is just heavy and everything is hard. And those are all really, really clear states or obvious situations where you know that you are in burnout. So now that we're able to recognize it, when we're into that space where everything has just become too much and we are knowing that we need to do something to get ourselves out of it, where do we even start? How can we begin to feel good and to feel capable and like we can keep going on this journey? I want to start with some more practical tips, as I always do. There's more sciencey things. And then we can get into the more spiritual side of this too, because that is always a little bit more fun and just as important. But I want you to understand that none of this is going to be fixed by something like a weekend away or just relaxing a little bit on the weekends. If you are overriding your nervous system all day, every day, and pushing yourself through when you are struggling, it is going to take a lot more than a bit of a rest on a weekend to get out of it. When you're in shutdown, when you are in that dorsal state, you actually have to go up through your sympathetic nervous system in order to get back to regulation or that ventral vagal state. So this is where I see a lot of people kind of get it a little bit wrong, because a lot of times when something is really difficult in our life or we're feeling really overwhelmed and we're struggling, a lot of the advice is, well, let's go and do things that are calming. Let's go and do a meditation class. Let's go and do a sound healing session. And a lot of the things that we would normally say are calming are actually not going to help you if you are in a state of shutdown or burnout. I remember when my last round of IVF wasn't successful and I just couldn't sleep. It was one of my absolute lowest points. And I went to a yin yoga class and there was a lot of like very slow, deep exhales, a lot of very slow, gentle movements where the aim was to bring people out of a sympathetic state into a place of more calm, which is fine if you are stressed and anxious and feeling really on edge. But when you're in that state of shutdown, bringing yourself even further into that slower pace can actually be really unhelpful. So you're going to feel like you're maybe a little bit more stuck in that place of shutdown. So what we need to do instead is mobilize the body. So mobilize the nervous system to come into a little bit more activation. So sort of think of it as a ladder. At the top of the ladder, we have regulation and that sort of ventral state of calm and presence. And then on the next ladder rung down, we have that activated state of agitation, that sympathetic nervous system where a lot of anxiety lives, a lot of agitation. And then below that is our state of dorsal or shutdown. So to get back up to regulation, you actually need to go through sympathetic to get there. So that's where I find that gentle movement and activation of the physical body, not extremes. I don't want you to get up and go and run a marathon by any means, but enough to start to very gently wake yourself up out of that state. So what does that look like? Things like small, slow movements. Maybe if you're lying in bed, just rocking your legs from side to side, being able to perhaps go and get a massage, a gentle, slow walk outdoors, anything that pulls you out of that state of helplessness or hopelessness is going to be key. If you are anything like I was when I was trying to conceive, your pantry probably looks like a mini pharmacy. Bottles everywhere, checklists, have I taken this? And maybe just like me, you were waking up at 2 a.m. thinking, oh my goodness, did I forget to take my CoQ10 today? Well, that's why I was so excited to discover Overgold from Arxi. This is created by expert fertility nutritionists Stephanie and Monique. Overgold is a 5-in-1 preconception supplement that simplifies your routine. Just 2 capsules a day gives you the powerhouse antioxidants, CoQ10, alpha lipoic acid, vitamins E and C, and the newest star on the scene, NAD+ precursors. Yep. All of that in just 2 capsules, not 10, not 12, or however many I was taking. No more rattling when you walk, just high quality, science-backed support for your reproductive health in the lead up to conception. And because the Arxi team are absolute legends, they are giving you $10 off your first order when you use the code GEN10. So head to FromArxi.com, that's ARXI, and use the code GEN10 to nail your preconception. Always read the label and follow directions for use. Overgold is not indicated for use in pregnancy or lactation. Do not take while on warfarin therapy without medical advice. Vitamin and mineral supplements should not replace a balanced diet. So let's just back up a little bit now and talk a little bit about, I like this idea of micro practices that we can do. So when you have noticed some of the signs of burnout and shutdown. So you're able to notice physically and emotionally when you're really depleted and you just have no energy for anything else. I want you to notice that, but also be able to compare it to when you are in those states of more sympathetic. So really anxious, really agitated, like can't sit still, can't focus. You notice your heart's beating really, really fast. We need to be able to know when we're in each of those because the way to regulate yourself is completely different for each of them. So like I said, if you are in shutdown, going to the yin yoga class, doing the calming little practices like that are not going to help you, but they will help you if you are very, very wired and stressed. So please know the signs of what's happening in your body when you are in both of those states. So these little micro practices of regulating your nervous system, I really like to talk about it in a way where you make it a part of your daily life. It's not something that you do in order to get pregnant. They are things that you incorporate so that you are more capable of handling the daily stresses and the ongoing challenges that the fertility journey is going to present to you. So no, we're not going to remove any of the stress of this journey, but when these more difficult times come up, you're going to be able to navigate them more easily. So what we can do, well, this is very dependent on you, like so many of the things that I talk about. But this is where I think if you really are noticing some of these symptoms of burnout and shutdown, it is so important to work with someone who is trauma trained and trauma informed, that knows the difference of being able to recognize these states and the sort of gentle practices or tools to offer to bring yourself out of them. So if you're really struggling and you want to go and work with someone who is able to help you, please have that conversation with them and make sure that they feel confident in recognizing the different states of the nervous system and what to do within each state. Before we even get to that point of perhaps working with someone else though, like I said, you've got so many tools at your disposal already. Co-regulation is so important. Just talking to someone on the phone can be incredibly helpful to pull you out of shutdown. Being able to sit with your partner, have a hug, maybe let them be the one to give you a foot massage for 10 minutes. You know, all these very gentle, very sort of calming, but stimulating at the same time. You know, they're going to activate your nervous system, but not in a very stressful way. So find things that really work for you. Going for walks in nature, breath work, yoga, Pilates, going for a run, seeing your dog playing at the park, whatever works for you. we need to find these tools that are both slightly activating but calming at the same time. So mobilizing the nervous system, but without overly stressing you. So step 3 here is being able to set energetic boundaries. So knowing the things that really drain your energy. I don't think that Google deep dives or going into online forums and trying to find someone who has the exact same symptoms as you and trying to find someone who had a positive outcome, any of these things are ever going to be helpful. I don't think I ever went down the Google rabbit hole and really got what I wanted at any stage of my fertility journey. So please set boundaries on yourself around those things that you know aren't really that good for you and that are going to cause you to keep going into that state of anxiety and overwhelm. And after a while, it's going to become too much. I really would love if you could schedule a fertility-free day at least once a week. You can do it as many days of the week as you like. But on this day, you're going to live your life as though this is no longer an issue. So perhaps you want to sit into the energy of I know my baby is on the way at some point in the future. I'm not going to worry about it today. I'm going to do whatever I want. So throw everything out the window that you should be doing for your fertility and do things because they feel good for you, whatever that looks like. Schedule at least one day a week. Maybe you don't take as many supplements. Maybe you eat what you want. You have a glass of wine. You just remember to enjoy yourself and your life again. I think that is so incredibly important. The last part that I want to speak to is a little bit more spiritual and a little bit more woo. And it is about reconnecting with joy. This is something that I love talking about with my students because when we come into these practices of yoga, and I think it attracts a lot of people who are not necessarily religious, that don't have sort of that spiritual foundation in another part of their life. But when we can start to connect things to sort of a higher purpose and we see how everything kind of falls into place, I find that people really get that sense of knowing, and they're able to lean into that energy of trust a lot more easily here. We talk in yoga a lot about all of the energy centers within the body. So the chakra centers, of which we have 7 throughout our body. And the sacral center, which sits within the pelvis, is the space of creation. And I find that this place can become very, very blocked, very stagnant when you have been on this journey of trying to conceive for a long time. And creation doesn't have to mean creating a baby. I find when this energy center is shut down, it shuts off a lot of our creative energies for other pursuits in our life as well. So think about where in your life you could be a little bit more creative. Was there something that you really loved to do that you no longer do? Maybe it was something that you loved doing at school or when you were younger. Maybe you loved to paint or to cook or to knit or anything at all that you no longer do. Something that has zero to do with fertility, but it just lights you up and it lets you use a different part of your brain to what you're used to using. Being able to awaken this energy, that beautiful sacral energy, is a very, very powerful tool. I found that after I had my miscarriage and I decided to go back and train as a yoga teacher, that was when I felt all of those creative energies really coming alive. And it was within that energy that I fell pregnant again and ended up, that was the pregnancy that became my little boy. But I didn't remember a time in my life where I had just been in a place where I was using my brain and coming up with all of these beautiful flows that I was going to be able to one day teach my future students and creating business ideas and ways of communicating this to the world. It just lit me up in a way that I hadn't experienced for years at this stage. It was so incredibly powerful. So find what that is for you. Dance, get creative, do something purely because it's fun. I want to give you something to meditate or journal on as well as we are finishing up this episode. And this was a question that really got me out of that very masculine go, go, go energy and into that very beautiful, feminine, flowing, allowing and receiving energy. So I want you to ask yourself the question, Where am I pushing too hard on my fertility journey? And what would relief feel like right now? Just shifting out of this grasping, this kind of desperation and frustrated energy and into, I'm just going to stay in one place and see what comes to me, is so powerful. This is a question I think that you should invite yourself to think about every single day. And it's very hard to do because at the same time, we do want to take aligned action on this journey. We do want to look after our bodies, and maybe we do need medical treatment and we do need to go and see the right doctors. And don't get me wrong, we need to do all of those things as well. But coming at it from an energy of like, I'm going to do everything that's within my power and the rest I'm going to just trust is on its way. It's a very difficult place to get into, and you're not going to get it right every day, but it is a huge shift that I think you'll find incredibly powerful. So recapping what we've talked about a little bit today, noticing the signs of burnout within your body and how that might show up for you, and being able to separate those feelings and signs of burnout from those more hypervigilant and very anxious and stressed signs as well. So when we're in shutdown, we need gentle movements and ways to kind of wake up our bodies out of that state. But when we're very agitated and very stressed, we need those more calming and soothing practices as well. So really being able to recognize the difference between those is super important. And then knowing what works for you, what's going to help you in each of these states. Remember to be able to set boundaries on yourself and the things that, trigger you, and perhaps setting boundaries on others and people around you that are going to set you off. And then being able to reconnect to joy and to fun and to creativity again. I hope that you have found this episode helpful. As a few notes that I've just written here that I wanted to leave you with, I want to remind you that your worth and all of the progress that you're making on this journey is not measured by constant energy and effort. It doesn't matter how much you do, it's not going to mean anything about you on this journey. So know that if you have a day where you don't want to take your supplements for one day, or, you stayed up a little bit late and you were spending time with friends, and whatever it is, like, don't beat yourself up, and know that, like everything, this is a learning curve and something that you aren't going to get quote unquote right every day. But know that all of the progress and all of the effort that you're putting into this is not for nothing. I want to remind you that slowing down is not giving up, just something that cannot be said enough. It is creating space for your body to feel safe. That is so, so important. So I encourage you to take one small step this week to break the cycle of burnout. So whether it is noticing those signs of chronic dysregulation and feeling very overwhelmed and being able to find a calming practice to support that, or if you're noticing those signs of really deep shutdown, knowing what you can do to help yourself through that as well. So thank you for listening right to the end of this episode. Now, remember, if you want some more guided tools on your fertility journey, I have a really extensive fertility yoga, meditation, and breathwork course available. This is a self-paced course that you can always reach out for support through at any time you need, but it's something that you can do in the comfort of your own home, in the time that feels comfortable and right for you. It's absolutely able to work within your routine and everything else that you have going on in your life. It is designed to support you, not to be another thing on your to-do list. So if you would like to learn more about that, you can have a link that I have left down into the show notes. But if you did find this episode helpful, I would be honored if you could leave a quick written review, no matter where you're listening or watching this podcast. A quick review is the very best way for me to get the word out to as many people as possible. Now, next week on the podcast, we are chatting with hypnotherapist Elle Margetson. So she is a fertility and loss therapist, and she speaks extensively about pregnancy loss, grief, and starting over again. If you are struggling on this journey and you've ever said to yourself, I just can't live like this anymore, then this is the episode that you will want to hear. And it is a very deep and incredibly important episode. So I hope that you can join me back next week for that. But until then, I am sending you all my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.